Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, welcome to my channel if you're new, hello, my name is Casper. I make videos here on the internet about mental health, autism and being trans because I have all three of those things going on and I like to talk about things. Today I'm going to be talking to you guys about things that I did not realise were related to my ASD, because most of what I do is ASD related and it's quite scary. So here are 5 lesser known ASD traits, I guess. Number 1 is interoception. Now, if you do not know what interoception is, in layman's language, it's basically your body being in communication with your brain. So that could be usually about its needs. So things like how tired you are, being hungry, being thirsty, needing to go to the toilet, body temperature regulation, that sort of thing. A lot of autistic people struggle with interoception. They have very poor interoception. So although they could be very, very hungry, their body hasn't communicated that with their brain, or their brain hasn't picked up the signals, is usually how it goes, which often means that they don't register that they are hungry or thirsty or whatever until it is at the extreme that they are ravenous, that they are incredibly thirsty, or holy moly, I'm going to wet myself, that kind of stuff. For me, that means going days without drinking water, having very restricted toilet movements, and having the physical side effects of not eating, not drinking, that sort of stuff. I'm obviously not going to go into too much detail about that. It also means that I do not feel the cold very well, so I often don't wear clothes that are appropriate for the weather because I can't tell, if that makes sense. So I often have to go by what other people say or what other people are wearing, which is very weird because I'm very sensitive to the heat, but I'm not sensitive to the cold. It doesn't make sense. But yeah, some autistic people have the complete opposite problem where they have very good interoception. They are incredibly sensitive to their body's cues and they find it incredibly uncomfortable. For me, that's just not the case. But like I said, I didn't know that until literally like 6 months ago. So the next thing is kind of similar to that in the way that it's proprioception. Proprioception is kind of like spatial awareness in the fact that it's knowing where your body is in space. So knowing where you are in relation to other objects and the world around you in general. Again, a lot of autistic people struggle with this, which is why you'll often find your autistic friends sitting in very weird positions, having as much contact with their body on the floor or wherever they're sitting as possible, because they often need more of their body in contact for their brain to register where they are. It's often why a lot of autistic people often find things like deep pressure, so weighted blankets, that sort of thing, very calming, very grounding, because again, it helps them know where they are and it helps them feel their body. A lot of autistic people, particularly when they get distressed, it's almost like they're floating. They just kind of get very light on their feet, and so having that pressure helps ground them. But again, it's different. The third thing is something that I don't really struggle with anymore, but I did as a kid, and that is speech impediment. Apparently, it's incredibly common to have a speech impediment as an autistic kid. I had a stutter when I was a child. I got referred to speech therapy, but even 20 years ago, NHS waiting lists were incredibly long, and by the time I got to the top of the waiting list, I no longer met the criteria for it, and I grew out of it. But again, delayed development of skills is very, very common. A lot of autistic people tend to teach themselves, which is why a lot of, they maybe don't learn or talk or do things in the way that most people do, but that's something different. The number 4, sorry, without speeding through this, But when it gets dark outside, the cortisol levels in your body drop, which usually makes you feel a little bit sleepy, quite tired, ready for bed. They did a study, I think it was back in 2010 now, where they found that the cortisol levels in autistic people do not drop as much as they do in neurotypical people, um, which is often why, particularly in young children, autistic people often struggle to unwind and get themselves self-soothing and fall asleep. Um, we often don't fall asleep until very late into the night, and we don't get as much sleep as say we should probably. But I think that goes for most people, to be quite honest. But if you talk to my mother, I'm sure she'll agree in the fact that I was a nightmare at bedtime. I really, really struggled to get to sleep, to calm down, to unwind when it was getting to that bedtime. And it's partly a routine thing, it's partly an interception thing, but also because their cortisol levels. Even as an adult, I massively struggle with my sleep, and that has a massive knock-on effect on my mental health. The fifth and final thing is delayed motor skills. Now, I knew that my poor motor skills were autism / dyspraxia related thing because I also have dyspraxia. But I did not know that my delayed motor skills were related to my autism. So for me personally, I didn't start walking until I was 2.5. I also did not crawl. Also, that I say instinct, it wasn't for me. That reflex where you fall over and you put your hands out in front of your face. I never had that, so I used to just headbutt the floor. That was something I had to learn, and apparently that's very common in autistic people, that they just don't have reflexes that we're meant to have, and that they often are slower to pick skills up, if at all. Skill regression is also quite common, even in autistic adults. We are inept in many things. But yeah, that is everything. I'm sure there are many, many more. The more you research into it, the deeper of a wormhole you go down, and the more everything starts to make sense, and it's quite scary. Um, so yeah, if you have anything else that you'd like to add, please put them in the comments below. Feel free to follow me on my Instagram. It's at creating.casper. I am pretty accurate, pretty active on there. So yeah, if you have any other video requests, please again put them in the comments. I will hopefully be back next week with another video. But until then, stay safe.